Sacred Grit, a podcast for those rethinking faith and wanting something real. I'm Jason Lyle. Together, we'll do the hard, sacred work of unlearning what harms, discovering what heals, and living with integrity. On today's episode, you'll learn why taking full responsibility for your life, your choices, your healing, your mindset is the only true path to peace. We'll explore how your ability to respond is where God shows up, not in controlling outcomes, but in how you meet each moment with truth and love. Today's episode is brought to you by Oak Haven Diagnostics. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sacred Grit podcast and Sacred Sunday. So I've been thinking a lot about responsibility, and it's a word that I use a lot on men's retreats and also when I'm working one-on-one with folks. So I want you to think about the word responsibility literally is your ability to respond, right, to each moment and what's happening to you. And we've talked about that quite a bit over the last few episodes. We talked about, creating space in our thoughts, being able to stop, being able to pause, breathe, pause, choose, live. And that is our responsibility. It's our ability to just stop for just a moment and capture that moment and decide how we're going to respond. And I believe if we respond out of love for ourselves, then we'll naturally be responding out of love for others. Now, here's the thing, is the victim, that victim mentality that we talk about, or I talk about quite a bit, is the driving force behind lack of responsibility because we're responding from a place that isn't necessarily true. So when I was a pastor, I've told this story before, but when I was a pastor in 2017, I resigned my job because of having affairs. And after that, of course, my family wasn't all that happy with me, as you can imagine, and I was trying to get everything worked out, and it was just a lot going on. And, people in the church were upset, rightfully so. I had just made a mess. We had 150 or probably not that many, maybe 100 people or so coming to the church. I had been a pastor there for 13 years. My mom and daddy went to church there. It was a shit show, I really made a mess out of my life. And I really just didn't have the ability at the time to just be able to accept that that's what I had done and, respond. I made up all kind of stories around why I was resigning. I never really told anyone the absolute truth until later on. My response was definitely not, as it should be because I was responding as a victim. And, it was poor woe is me. This job is so hard and, people expect so much and no wonder I had an affair. Look at how much people expect of me and these people don't love me and nobody's treating me right. And so my ability to respond was based off of all those things. It was that victim mentality. And I would say that if I dug a little bit deeper, I may even say that, I was acting from an adopted kid. And once again, I hope you're hearing my words here. I'm not saying that that's an excuse. I'm just saying that at the time, that's what my ability was, right? So I was just responding from that place. And I don't know that I knew it. I would say that I knew it wasn't right. I knew that what I was doing was not true, but it was almost as if that was the only thing I could do. Because if I could stay in that victim space, well, that just felt better, right? Because it could be somebody else's fault. Well, I'm this poor little whatever, and so these people are being mean to me. And let me just explain my story to them, and now they should just be okay with who I am. But that's just not how this works, because our ability to respond is based off who we're acting from, right? And I could act from the victim or from the true man that I am. But it depends on what I have access to. Now, that's where the key is in Sacred Grit is what do I have access to? Because most of us are walking around with complete access to this wimp that we call a victim, right? This kind of weak, it's like, oh, they beat me down and this happened and that happened and the other happened. And listen, I don't want to take away from that either because all that may be true, but there's also another place that we can respond, and it's a place where I could have responded, and that is the true man that I am. So I could have just stopped and said, you know what? I have made this choice to have these affairs and to have this affair. I made this choice to do all of these things, and now I am having to make a choice to leave my church. And I was also making a choice to lie, to tell people things that were less than true, to manipulate people to try to get them to forgive me before they were ready, all manner of things, right? Or I could have just chose to be a man, the man that I am, and say, you know what, that is right. That is exactly what I did. And now I'm owning up to that. Because it's not about the blame, it's about the choice. It's not about the blame, it's about the choice. I mean, I can always find somebody to blame for something, right? I mean, we all can. But I can't control what's done to me, but I can control what I do next. That reminds me of a quote. I can't remember who said it, but you can bet your ass it's not me who said it. They said, what happened to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, right? What happened to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. So the way that I hear that is, I have all manner of friends who had terrible things happen to them. Some of them, they were, in foster care and they were abused. Some of them had family members who abused them. Some of them grew up with alcoholic parents that, were less than optimal parents. And they all have, this trauma that's happened to them, and that is not their fault, right? It's not their fault that somebody chose to hurt them as a child, but it is their responsibility. Now, on the surface, that sounds harsh, right? But let me ask you this. What else are you supposed to do? Because forgiveness of what has been done gives us the freedom to be in charge of our lives, right? Now, we'd have this whole conversation about forgiveness and say, well, that lets people off the hook. Let me tell you something, brother. They are already off the hook. They're already off the hook. I mean, I don't know that there's people who have hurt me in the past that sit around and dwell on it in the way that I dwell on it, right? As a matter of fact, most of them that have done the most damage probably forgot that they did it. I mean, it doesn't really even have any bearing, but I'm walking around carrying that burden all the time. And that makes me think about Jesus being on the cross, right? And they've nailed him to the cross. And as the story goes, he's dying and he hollers out, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. What is he doing? He's setting himself free. He's saying, I will not hang here as a victim. Because at the end of the day, they don't understand what it is that they're doing. And I would say that maybe we could start reframing the way that we see these things that have been done to us, and we reframe our responsibility to be able to say, you know what, maybe when that person did whatever they did to me, maybe they didn't know the full ramifications of what was going to happen to me. Now, once again, I'm not trying to give somebody the free pass, because really at the end of the day, they already have a free pass, right? I mean, it's done. And I would say, and I know some of my friends have went back and talked to their parent or whatever and try to have conversations, and the parents were like, oh, I didn't do that to you. That wasn't that bad. That didn't really happen. But the thing is, man, not taking our responsibility gives power over to them, and you're no longer in charge, right? So if I say, well, I'm not going to be able to respond to this in any other way but a victim mentality, well, that person is in control, not me. But when I say, you know what, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, I am going to, not holier than thou, but I am going to respond to this situation based off of my life. Now, why is that sacred grip? Because we talk about that prefrontal cortex, that rational thought, the front of our brain that allows us to access rational thought, connecting to our amygdala or our fight or flight system. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot on Sacred Grit, or if you come to a men's retreat, or if you sign up for coaching, you'll hear a lot about this ability to grab a rational thought and to pull it down into our body. Because a lot of this behavior that we have, the behaviors that I was having, made no sense because I did not have access. Well, I had access to rational thought, but I did not have the ability to get it into my body. And that's what Sacred Grit is. Sacred grit is about teaching men how to take that rational thought and put it into our body. So what does this look like, right? This is it. So what can I change? That's the first thing that we ask ourselves. We have to be able to breathe, pause, choose, live. So think about it. We take that breath and we pause. And what do we say? What can I change? That reminds me of the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What can I do right now? That's the first question. Who is the man that I want to be? Right? That's the next question. So what can I do and who is the man I want to be? Those are two great questions. And then just letting go of the need to be right. Because if you say, well, what can I change and who's the man I want to be? Then the next logical thing is to start going, but they. But maybe you just need to let go of the need to be right. Because do you want to be right or do you want to be at peace? Right? Because I don't think you can have both all the time. I mean, if you're going through a divorce, if you're going through a bad business deal, financial hard times, a million different things, right? You can either say, well, if they would only, or if this one would only, but actually you could just go, hey, what can I change? Who's the man that I want to be? And I can just let go of the need to be right. You might be right. I'm not going to argue that point, but where is the peace? And that's what sacred grit is finding that peace in the midst of dysregulation. Now, here's a little call to action for you. I want you could just take a moment, and we'll talk about more on Gritty Wednesday when we talk about stop waiting and start responding on Gritty Wednesday. But here's what I want you to think about right now. What's one area you've been waiting on someone else to make it right? One area where you've just been waiting on someone else to make it right. And what's one place where peace is waiting on you to respond differently? One place where you can just in your head go, you know what? If I would just respond to that situation differently, I could have peace. And what would it look like this week to choose peace by owning your response? I mean, what could that look like? Just by doing these simple things. Because if you've been doing the little breath exercise that I gave you a couple of Gritty Wednesdays ago, and you're starting to capture those thoughts and grab those thoughts, and you're doing the breathe, pause, choose, live. Now we're building into this ability to respond, to be able to say, you know what? I'm going to be the captain of my soul. The most powerful thing that you can do as a man is to be autonomous, to not give anybody else power over your soul. I think about Viktor Frankl. He was a Jew, and he was in a concentration camp. And he wrote in his book, I think it's Man's Search for Meaning. Maybe not. Anyhow, Viktor Frankl, you can look it up. It's his memoir. But he says in there that as his persecutors were, killing people around him and beating him and withholding food from him, that he would think to himself, they can hurt me, they can take my freedom, but what they can't do is take my inner peace. I can still choose in the midst of all this to have inner peace. Because brothers, listen to me. The only thing that we get in this life is a choice. We get to choose. We get to choose how we'll respond. We get to choose how we'll live. We get to choose the man we will be. We get to choose the decisions we will make, even when they are not popular. That is our choice. That is how we live fully alive. I hope this helps you. On Gritty Wednesday, we'll talk about stop waiting and start responding. I'm going to give you some more practical tools to use to be able to not only stop and grab these thoughts, but to stop waiting on it to change and start responding to create change. All right, so this episode, once again, brought to you by Chuck Swinson and the good folks down at Chick-fil-A Griffin. Now, I say this all the time. Chuck's my buddy. But here's the thing about Chick-fil-A Griffin, man. It's one of the best Chick-fil-A's around. They've got great service. It's a great facility. They'll always take care of you. And if you are a person who, just loves Chick-fil-A, man, it might even be worth a trip. I'll just tell you, it might even be worth a trip to go down there and see Chuck and the good folks at Chick-fil-A. Not to mention, he's one of the best humans on the face of the planet. All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a great Sacred Sunday. I hope you spend some time with your family. I hope you get outside, spend a little bit of time in nature. And most of all, I hope you love yourself radically. I'll see you on Gritty Wednesday. All right. Have a great week.